We are going to look at a position that was very powerful, that was called Minister of State in the office of the President. This person was very powerful, that the only two people who are more powerful than him, he only feared the head of state and the spouse, or I can say the first lady. The Minister of State during Jomo Kenyatta's time was Mbio Koinange. Minister of State during Arap Moi's time was Total Man. And the Minister of State during Mwai Kibaki's time was Chris Mrungaru. We will study the office and the officers. We have very many bright millenniums. They'd be shocked on what these people were. But for the millenniums not to worry, they only have to look at Matiang'i. The Internal Affairs CS was so powerful that he was almost, I could say he was like a Minister of State in the office of the President. Before we start with that, let us start with the three ministries that are almost dead. I will start with the Ministry of Local Government. Before the 2010 Constitution, we had local councils. We had the Urban Council, we had the Town Council, we had the Municipal Council, and we had the Municipal Council, we had the City Council, and we had the County Council. The person coordinating the councils was the Minister for Local Government. And the Minister for Local Government, the law and the Constitution then guaranteed him power to dissolve those councils with little or no excuse, especially if the Minister for Local Government happened to be the Secretary General of the ruling party, KANU. We had it with Robert Matano. We had it with Moses Mudavadi. We had it with Kamotho. These ministers would dissolve councils with little or no excuse and replaced them with some appointed commission, like Nairobi City Council was replaced. Nairobi City Council under the mayor was then Nathan Kahara. It was replaced by various councils and various commission. It was called Nairobi City Commission. And you'll find that the commission which replaced them was so corrupt and answerable to nobody else than the Minister for Local Government. That is why when we started the 2010 Constitution, in my view, anybody I meet, they believe that the 2010 Constitution was the best. To me, I don't agree. 2010 Constitution had two negative aspects. First of all, we allowed the human rights organization to put it as if it was what they would have wished for. It's like allowing drunkards to make a constitution. They would say, after taking breakfast, you take a beer. After lunch, you take a beer. So these people, just put on a constitution that was very much pro-human rights. That is what all they wanted to care about. Another thing that made the 2010 constitution bad is that it was a protest constitution, where we saw we were not happy with such a thing. If it was heads up, we turned it into tails up. Where the constitution says the president has to do this without any power, we place a lot of hurdles, vikwazo, for the president not to do it. Where we saw this and this and it didn't please us, we placed it the opposite of what it was. So the 2010 constitution was only to overturn where we were not pleased with the previous constitution. That is my point of. So when it came to the Ministry of Local Governments, we made, which is good, we made local governments, now called county governments, semi-states, which is good. And we made it so hard, which is also good, to remove a governor. You have seen it with Kawera Mwangaza, you have seen it with other governors. Waititu was only removed because he was not on good terms with Uhuru Kenyatta. So you find that nowadays removing, and it is good. Where it is good, I'll have to say it is good, because a governor has the mandate of the people to be the governor for 5 years. So we did not make it impossible for him or her to be removed, as you have seen with Kawera Mwangaza, but we have made it very, very hard to remove that person. That is the positive aspect of it. Now, the work of the Minister for Local Government was taken up partly by the Deputy President, because now coordinating governors is left in the arms of Council of Governors, whom they elect their own officials, with the Deputy President. You remember when Uhuru removed all powers from Ruto, Ruto only remained with a few, coordinating the Council of Governors, because that is stated in the Constitution. Now, when you want to remove a governor, those days it was the Minister for Local Government. Nowadays, it is the President who has to receive signatures. That one you know. So I've answered the Ministry of Local Government. Now we go to Ministry for Home Affairs. Home Affairs, in some countries, it is called Internal Affairs. In the new Constitution, the President is allowed to create as different ministries as he wants, so as to rule the way he had promised people. Coincidentally, all the president, he has to have within a certain number. He's not allowed like the other constitution, where we had over 40 ministers. He's given a number, and the two presidents so far, they have created the Ministry of Internal Affairs. So in some countries, Internal Affairs is called Home Affairs, and in some countries it's called Internal Affairs. The former Ministry of Home Affairs was the ministry which was with the Vice President. You can remember, but not by constitution, but it is because the President Kenyatta and President Moi wanted it to be that way. You will, those old enough will remember that Mwai Kibaki, when he was the Vice President, initially he was the Vice President and Minister for Finance, but later he became Vice President and Minister for Home Affairs. You'll remember when George Saitoti was the Vice President, he was the Minister for Finance also and Vice President. So the Home Affairs was mostly by the Vice President, but it was not constitutional, or it was not mandatory. The Ministry of Home Affairs had to deal with all internal affairs ministries as per what the Uhuru government was and as per how Ruto government is. But when you are a vice president, mostly, or even a deputy president, you find that you are beaten left, right by people. So the Ministry of Home Affairs was stripped slowly by slowly, and powers taken to the office of the president. The office of the president from 1964 was the coordinating ministry, or we can say it is the prime cabinet secretary. But when people were not happy with the then Vice President Daniel Toroitich arap Moi, they started whistling off some of his powers, like the police was removed from Home Affairs and taken to the office of the President. Later, when he became the President, he did not revert it to the Vice President. So you'll find that most of those things were taken out. But with the Uhuru Kenyatta government and Ruto government, all those powers were reverted back to the Ministry of Internal Security. Now we have the third and last ministry, which is the purpose of our discussion today. That is the Minister of State in the office of the President. It was assumed, and rightly so, that the President is so busy coordinating with other ministries. So he had to have a person. Murungaru once said, and he was correct, that the Minister of State in the office of the President has no ministry. He's more or less an assistant minister in the office of the President, or a senior assistant minister in the office of the President. He has no AIE, he has no whatever. He only assists the President. But you will see how these three ministers became so powerful that they became prime cabinet secretaries in their own rights. And I'll even give an example of their history before they became politicians. First of all, Bio Koinange had a master's degree, but he was in London. He never fought for independence. That is why Martin Shikuku used to mock him, because he used to work for a milk company like KCC. So Martin Shikuku in parliament would mock him and say, wakati tunapigania uhuru, wewe ulikuwa unauza maziwa London. But because he was of the president's tribe and he came from the president's home region, he became so powerful that he overruled all others. He was even more powerful than the Vice President Moi. And he even overruled a lot. He used to even, those millenniums will remember Matiang'i. That is how Bio Koinange was. He never stepped in parliament, although the parliament said that an MP missing a number of meetings, he has to forfeit his seat. And he used to tell people of his constituency, Kiamba, that he only needed 2 votes. You can refuse to vote for me, but I only need Jomo Kenyatta's vote and Mama Ngina's vote. That is Bio Koinange. And Bio Koinange was implicated in political assassinations there. What I know is that when J.M. Kariuki had been injured and a decision was made, a quick decision was being made whether to eliminate him or not, he participated in that decision. At that time when a decision was made, do we kill him or we leave him? That time he was consulted and he agreed that you remember, even when the findings were taken to the president said, if you have mentioned Bio Koinange, then you should have even included my name. Then we come to Daniel Toroitich arap Moi. We had Total Man. He was so powerful that he said, mimi ni mwanaume kamili, yani total man. He could decide that instead of power station being hydroelectric power station being made on Sonto Mirio, had to be transferred to Takwel Gorge, which by then was a semi-desert. But you can see where the weather changes, Rift Valley has started springing up. And so in Rift Valley, we need a lot of such. I am a supporter of Aror and Kimwarer. We need such dams so that we harvest water for future use or even hydroelectric power station. So that is so powerful, and he, leave alone Mbio Koinange, who rang the Kingsway House and said, shoot and kill JM. Biwott himself shot Ouko. So you can see how powerful he became. Lastly, we have Chris Murungaru. If you look at all these ministers who are graduates, so you cannot say anybody was. But Murungaru was a pharmacist. Is a pharmacist. Chris Murungaru was never a politician, but he was somebody who used to mobilize people. Then his area MP, Kairu, died. So the next person who was to be near there, I can equate him to Wakoli. When Moses Masika Wetangula was made a speaker, there were so many powerful people who could become senators, but they took Wakoli just as because he was a right-hand man of Wetangula. So the same when Kairu died, his right-hand man was Murungaru. I want to remind my viewer that Kairu was the GSU officer who was not a GSU officer. He was a police officer, railway police officer, working at Makongeni police station in, Makongeni railway quarters, up Jogoo Road. He was working there, and when JM died, JM's watch and some documents were found in his house. So he died when he was the MP for Kieni, and Murungaru was made the MP. So that was the time when Kibaki was in the opposition. Murungaru was so desperate when he was the MP that at one time when he was, there was a newspaper report that he was being evicted from his house near Valley Arcade, Bernard in Nairobi. But when Kibaki took over, Murungaru was made the Minister for State in the office of the President. But of all ministers of state, I admire him. Well, of course, I am from Kieni, a place called Narumuro. That is where my grandfather allocated my mother some land. That is not for you now to know. But I am from Narumuro, if I can say so. If my mother has land there, then that I'm from Narumuro. I can say that, not because I'm from Narumuro, but I could say that he was the cleverest of them. Do you know what Chris Murungaru did? Chris Murungaru went to suppliers of the government. He had an expert. You know, being a minister of state, you have so many advisors. And he asked them, how much is a Land Rover costing? And he was told a Land Rover costs twice the amount that a Land Cruiser costs. So he said, all government departments in the office of the president will from now on be buying Land Cruisers. He annoyed the West, he annoyed the Americans, he annoyed the British, because Land Rovers belongs to the British. And you know, for Toyota East Africa to give you something, they give you 10%. Can you tell me how many Land Rovers administration police has? Can you tell me how many Land Rovers Kenya police has? Immigration, provincial commissioner, so on. And he was given a lot of money, which he set up. He used to set up something to do with the, previously if you wanted AI, you had to get it from abroad. Now he has his own. That is the cleverest person who has ever become the Minister of State in the office of the President. Such powers, Uhuru delivered them to Matiang'i, but on the other hand, I can say if we have to talk about very good ministers of state in the office of the president, I can say that Saitoti, after becoming the vice president, he later became minister of state for the office of the president, internal security, and he was very good. Kindiki is also very good, but you see, this is too early in Ruto's government. We do not know. The worst minister of state in the office of the president was Ole Lenku. He made mistakes after mistakes. The worst being Westgate, where you could see whenever he was addressing the press, Karangi, who was the chief of defense forces, would whisper things for him. It was like an interpreter, somebody answering press in a language you don't understand, and then you translate it into English or a language that people understand. That was him. You know, for you to be a minister of state, you are controlled by these security people, but behind, you don't even show it. But Ole Lenku you'd ask a question, then he would bend over, listen to Karangi, and give you the answer. But the worst of the worst, where Ole Lenku did, was when he said that a small, insignificant number of people have died. One person is not insignificant, but he said a few insignificant people have died. That was the worst minister of state in the office of the president.